Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Dianne and You Show. This is Dianne Show. We call it Dianne and You. We call it Dianne and Nathan today. Welcome, Nathan Segal, to the Dianne Show.
Thanks for having me.
I am super excited, and please do introduce yourself very quickly, and then I'll introduce myself.
Well, just don't know what to tell you, but transplanted Canadian, currently living in Mexico. Came down here about 7 years ago, and don't know what else to tell you. I mean, I've worked as a freelance writer for a long time. Before that, photographer, and recently really made the decision to go full-time into joint ventures. And that's where I'm focusing the bulk of my attention now.
Well, thank you for that. And today we will be talking about joint ventureship. And before we do that, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Dianne Ojar, as you know, the host of the Dianne Show. I am what we refer to now as the experiential coach. Yes, that is my title. Also, the presidency of Audit Media Network. And of course, we're an author, radio host, TV host, you name it, I do it. And I've been writing a lot for magazines these days and books. I don't even know how that happened. But I want to say thank you all so much for joining us. And, please do in the chat, send us a message if a question for Nathan and I, because we will be talking about joint ventureship. And I just want to say thank you. Catch us on the replay on your favorite network, social media. So Nathan, what I want to talk to you about is this. This is what I want to talk to you about. What is a joint venture?
Well, in its simplest form, it's where you bring two people together for the purpose of doing business. Now, the way I learned about it is you would have one person who's got a product or a service and the other who has a list. You bring the two of them together, they create an offer for the person's list. And when that offering sells, the two people tend to split it. The default commission is 50-50, but there can be many other ways of doing it. And my first joint venture was not like that. It was something entirely different. It was writing a software manual for a company, and they paid me a piece rate for it of like $10 per insertion with their software. But that was a rather unusual way of doing it. But there's no set way of doing a joint venture.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. And what I do know about joint ventures, since I'm also a joint venture broker, basically is we do it all the time. And I know there's some, I'm going to call it myths, that's my just terminology for it, is what people think that, if you're going to refer someone else to yourself or your contacts, it's wrong to do that, to make money off somebody. But here's the thing, it's like a referral fee. Now, there's some industries, like the real estate and so forth, you cannot do it. They have to call it a different fee. But that's basically what people do in any case. We refer people and they get a referral fee commission. And that's pretty much what a joint venture is. A different types of joint venture where you can be a connector.
Yeah, well, a joint venture, you have a bigger stake in the outcome. And when that happens, typically the fee for it would go up, whether that would be a commission or a monthly fee or whatever it is. But like you said, we refer people all the time, but most people never think that, this referral could be worth something. But for example, if you give a referral in the real estate field, it's very common that if you give a referral to a realtor and they actually sell a property, they will give you a referral fee for it. I mean, that actually happened to me recently, where a friend of mine was telling me he wanted to find properties in Mexico, but he had a very difficult time finding realtors, and said, I've got a referral for you. And I found him, and he said to me, if this works, I'm going to pay you a commission for whatever this guy's able to help us with. And the realtor himself also told me that if this works, I'll get a commission from him as well. So it's kind of cool.
It
Now,
is cool, but that
yeah.
definitely you have to also look at the other part where you're talking about some people consider to be double dipping. And as long as it's this full disclosure, I mean, one party doesn't have to know the other, but you just have to make sure that, it's you're doing it for the right reasons. Let's put it that way. You're not
Yeah,
lost.
it's possible to make two commissions, but my understanding for the most part is just usually one.
Hmm.
But what was really surprising to me is that my friend, who is also a realtor, said, I'll give you this. And then the realtor on the other end said, I'll give you this. And I just thought, okay, sure. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not going to say no.
Oh, no, I understand. So, what are some of the typical joint ventures have you worked on? Let's say
Well,
the
I've
simple
only
ones.
worked,
Let's
yeah,
start
I've
with
only,
some simple ones or people in your network because you do have a group on social media
yeah,
talking about joint
sure.
ventures all the time. So, what are some of the more common ones for somebody who is now thinking, "Oh, am I a joint venture broker? Or how can I
Well,
do this?" So, how? Why don't you tell them how they start this off in the first place? Being comfortable doing it. Maybe you should
well,
educate them that way.
I mean, there are multiple ways of doing this. There is no right way. The two that I mentioned at the beginning, those are the ones I'm most familiar with because that's where I started. But now that I'm working as a broker, it's quite common to give somebody a commission. They sometimes refer to it as affiliates, but in my opinion, affiliate is someone lower down the food chain. They have access to a certain amount of information to help you sell the product, but typically the commissions are not as high as what you would have with a joint venture broker who's closer to the principles of the business. They have more of a stake in it. But typically, what I'm seeing is as a JV broker, the commissions are around 10 to 20%. They might even be higher. Like I was looking at another site yesterday, and they said, okay, for the affiliate commission, it's 20%. But if you become a partner, it's 30%. And that's not uncommon.
No, it's not. And here's the thing: you can create whatever commission you want with your, whoever you're working with. It could be 50%, 40%. Nobody's going to go more than 50%. We know this.
Well,
Um,
actually, they do. Actually, they do. Well, let me explain. Let's say you're working on a joint venture relationship with somebody, and what you really want out of it is a list. You want to build a list so that you've got other offerings that you can sell. And quite often, the split might go 75-25. So 75 in favor of the JV broker, or sorry, the partner who's got the list and the contacts, 25% to you. In some cases, uh, what they will do is 100%. So if you set up the joint venture, the person who has the list and all the contacts gets 100% of the commission, but you get the names on the list, and then what you're able to do is to sell stuff to these people on the back end. And there are times when that happens. I've seen it.
well, I wouldn't call that a joint venture. And this is my opinion. I'll just call it selling your list. That's a whole nother story.
Um, okay.
Regardless, at the end of the day, is we're talking about where we have a joint venture is really a partnership between three people. And the point is that you want to make sure whatever you do, because remember, your contact is they're your assets. It's like gold to you. So you want to make sure
Hmm.
you're connected. Now, the thing about joint venture is that the first transaction that you do, that's the first one. But if you can tier it, meaning that okay, if you work with this other person, let's say I refer you to John, and pretty much John and you working with John, I may just get a commission on the first transaction, and then you guys can continue to make millions. But you can
That's
set it
true.
away and say, okay, maybe it's tiered. The next two or three transactions you do, I want a commission of this, or it could be going
Yeah.
up. The thing
If
about that is that you have to make sure and follow up.
Well, you got everything comes down to the agreements, and you have to decide in advance how you're going to work, and you have to write everything down so that people stay on track with it. It's easy to go off track without
Mhm.
that writing things down, and it can cause problems.
It can cost.
Um,
It's not an easy thing. It's not as simple as we say, but again, you have to follow up because we do know
sure,
where people have worked together. And what happens is that pretty much, the other person didn't know, or they didn't
sure,
follow through. So it's your job as a joint venture broker to follow up to make sure the transaction is going smoothly and
yeah.
nobody is actually behind your back, backstabbing you. Pretty much is what it is.
Well, I've had my fair share of the backstabbing. But in retrospect, I learned something very valuable. It was that at a there's a group on Facebook called JVology, and they were running a challenge. And midway through the challenge, I suddenly realized why I was having so many problems. And it was not, well, there was a certain amount of backstabbing, yes, a couple of times where people stole stuff from me, for sure.
Mhm.
But when I look back on it, there were a couple of things I could have done. Number one is to make sure I had better agreements. Mind you, if you're dealing with someone who's dishonest, it doesn't matter how good your agreements are. I've learned
Absolutely.
that the hard way too. But the other thing I also realized is that whenever I get involved in a joint venture now, I don't give away the farm, because that was my mistake in the past, like giving far too much. And that's what set me up for a royal screwing. And so what I realized is that I start slowly. So when I say don't give away the farm, well, okay, I might give you a pig or a goat or a horse, but I'm certainly not going to give you everything I have. And the reason for doing that is to see how well the other partner performs. What are they like?
Right.
What
That's
will
right.
they do?
That's the
And if
courting part. That's a courting part. Just don't jump in the bed and get married. It's a courting
yeah,
part because you're testing the water.
yeah.
Testing the
So
water.
yeah, so it's really important to do that. And when I finally realized that mistake, it's like, oh, and the other error was not having really good agreements. But even like I said, even so, if you're dealing with somebody who's not honest, they're going to take you to the cleaners anyway. But if you start small, and preferably like when you start small with something you already have, so you can just say, here, use this. Or if there's creation involved, no more than 2, 3, 4 hours of time on your part. Again, if it goes south, you don't lose much. But if you give away the whole farm, you could lose a lot. And that happened to me a couple of times, and boy, did that hurt.
Here's the other thing. We talk about commission, but you don't only have to ask commission. If it's something, because I know a friend who does international business, and if you like, you can turn that commission into maybe some equity or some
Sure, you could.
royalties. You can do anything as long as, again, you could become part of the project. It all depends on
Yeah,
what you do. But
there are a lot of
if you're going to do this, you have to know how to walk the walk and talk the talk. You got to know what you're saying and you got to know what you're doing. And you have to have, like you said, very
yeah.
strong contracts and you have to be business savvy. You have to know all these things and don't get screwed over. It's plain and simple.
Hopefully not.
It will
Hopefully
come to
not.
bite you. It will come to bite you. And this is
Well,
what it is.
yeah, it's really important to be clear in the language. There was one JV that I got involved with a while back, but the way that the partner was billing the product and what it actually did were two different things. And when I finally saw only in the last 20 minutes of talking together what it actually did, I realized that what he was telling me and what I understood it was a complete disconnect.
Mhm.
And I just thought, no, I'm sorry, this isn't for me at all. This isn't what I was wanting or what I needed or what I was after. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do this venture with you. And it's really important that when you're talking with people, you have to do stuff that resonates with you. In other words, that when you look at it, it feels good, right?
That's right.
You're running on your gut instinct of what to do,
Absolutely.
and there have been a few that I've gotten involved in recently, and it's like I look at it and go, oh, this feels good. I like this,
Hmm.
and that's what I go by, not necessarily by how much money I'm going to make. There was one offer that came down a while ago, but when I looked at it, I realized, no, this isn't for me. I don't like what you're doing. It's not a match. And the JV partner was very upset with me because, I thought you were more open. Like he threw all this blame at me, and I'm going, hey, uh, this particular kind of area, which had to do with spiritual practice, I have extremely high ethics about it, and it won't work with just anybody. They have to follow, or they have to fall into a specific category for me.
Hmm.
And when I looked at this guy's stuff, I realized he didn't do that. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not the right person for you. And he
Yes.
was really upset with me. And I'm going, I'm sorry, but I have a criteria. You don't meet it. I'm sorry.
Here's
And
the
that
thing,
was it.
people need you. And for those who are joining us, please on the replay, send a message out, ask a question if you need to, and we can, you know, answer your question for you. What we're talking about is joint ventures and becoming a joint venture broker. It is a job. It's very lucrative if you know to get, who you're working with in the right circles. The higher, the bigger the of course, the bigger the project, there's a lot more work. Do your homework, do your due diligence like anything else. But it can get very, people live off a joint ventureship,
Well,
right?
sure.
Really cool form a stream of revenue, but you got to know what you're doing. But I'm
Yeah.
telling you, there could be butting heads. There could be so many things because if you're talking about millions of dollars or there's a difference between thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and millions of dollars, and all those
Yeah.
things. But you got to know. And if you say you know people, you better know the person that you're connecting people to. Not, John knows
Yeah.
somebody that knows this one because
It's,
everybody you bring involved, it gets a little bit more complicated in the relationship, right?
yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like there was one situation where I thought I knew the guy. He was actually a friend, or I thought he was a friend until this joint venture happened. And when I came to collect money for my part in it, he essentially slammed the door in my face. I lost $2,000 out of that deal. And again, that was like when I look back on it, it was several things like giving away too much, not having a solid agreement, not having good boundaries, and not realizing that I needed to say to him up front, okay, well, if I do this, then it's going to be worth X amount of money. And I need an agreement between the two of us that you're going to pay this. And it never happened. It completely destroyed the relationship because the trust was gone. I mean,
That's
once the trust is gone, that's it. It's over.
joint
Um,
ventureship is solely based on trust.
yeah,
You have to
yeah,
be very, you have to have, that's what's the word I'm looking for. You have to be, like you said, it's your gut. You have to be satisfied with yourself. You have to make sure the more it's, you have to make sure it is the right thing. And you got to make sure that, hi Sue, thanks for joining. You have to
mm,
make sure it is what you want to do, because
yeah.
again, you can make a very good living from joint ventureship, but it's a lot of work. You're going to burn a lot of
Well,
bridges. You're going to you will burn a lot of bridges. There's no question about that. You will create some friends. But here's the thing with joint ventureship: for some people, there's no, I'm not your buddy type of thing. Some people, it's like it's really business. Like it's a different, like I said, sometimes you can friendships in this particular case, like you were talking about, it can destroy friendships. And there's some people do
it
joint
it
ventureship.
can.
It's so
It
business
can.
minded that they don't want to be a friend. They just want the transaction to go through and so forth. And
Yeah.
because that's what they do,
Well,
right? This is what they do.
there's
So the different personalities that you have to work with. If you're
yeah,
soft, it's not the best thing for you because people will eat you alive and take advantage
mhm,
of you. There's no question about that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are many different types of relationships, and like a major criteria for me is I am not looking for a one-off kind of thing where we just get together, do a deal, and that's over. Everything with me is about long-term recurring commissions.
Hmm.
So it's like with the friend of mine to do with the podcast idea. Like I'm waiting for him to get me some more information about it, but it's a long-term monthly thing because a podcast is sorry. I got distracted by a thing on my computer, but anyway, yeah, I tried to shut off all notifications, but I missed
That's
a
okay.
couple.
That's okay.
Anyway, but a
Go
podcast or
live.
yeah,
Anything can
yeah.
happen.
Well, with anything that you do in a joint venture, there's some people who just like the one-off, but I'm not that kind of person. I'm looking for long-term relationships. And so I want something that's going to produce commissions. Another thing is that I want to get to a point with something where it's on autopilot. So, or not necessarily autopilot, but something where you do the work once and you get paid 1,000, 10,000,
Hmm.
100,000 times. So I'll give you an example of that project I'm working on right now. So it's a service that will work. I'm not going to describe what the product is,
Absolutely.
but
Hmm. But
it's
that's
a type.
IP, right? That's intellectual property. You don't want to.
Yeah, it's so, but it's a type of service that can be used over and over again. But the idea behind this is that when I market something like this, like here's a common error that I think a lot of people make, uh, is the onesies and twosies. In other words,
Mhm.
you are going after businesses and it's just that one business and they might sign on, and if they do, you could get a recurring commission, which is nice. But I'm going to mention something else which is even better. So instead of just doing like one deal here and another deal here, another deal here, you instead you up level your game in a huge way. So what do? You go after organizations or preferably associations. Well, why? Well, an association might have 1,000 members in it, maybe 10,000 members in it. Who knows? But if you do a presentation to the center of influence for that association, if they really like it, guess what? They open the door to the rest of the association
Hmm.
and they will show off what you're doing. And so instead of just one presentation, you've just multiplied your efforts by 1,000 or 10,000 or even more than that. And that's where you can make an absolute killing as a joint venture broker if you do it that way. It's something I realized many years ago, and it's one of the smartest ways of doing business, because the ironic part is that those onesies and twosies, they may be a part of that association, but if you go to the association, you magnify your influence enormously. Highly recommend it.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, you want people to refer you to someone else. And that's when you
Yeah.
build a relationship. It's what it is. You have to think about, listen, folks, there's a lot of money out there. There is a lot of money out there. It's just you have to know which ocean you're swimming in and who you're swimming with. There's some sharks, there's some coral, there's some fly fish. I don't know much about fishes, there's dolphins, but you got to know who you play. You have to know the culture around all of this. You have to understand it. You have to live it, breathe it, sleep it. You just can't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a joint venture broker. You can't. But there's a lot more than this. You're going to give away so much. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be one of those people who want to be greedy. The money will come. You just have to prepare yourself and position yourself as best as you can. You follow those. And if it's something you have to piggyback off someone to find out how they work, then obviously I'm a joint venture broker, you know, so is Nathan. But the point is, you can do this. And you can do this on the side. Very occasional. And you'd be surprised. Some people love it. They eat it, they breathe it, they sleep it. The big guys do this. They do it because they eat and sleep and they wake up and this is what they do. But believe me, they know what they're doing. They know their craft. Definitely so. So Nathan, just as we're wrapping up here, so tell us some of the successes you've had. Some of them went smooth. Was it the first time, or there's always a little bump along the roads?
Well, the first time I did this, it was a result of studying an internet marketing course. It was called Protege. It's written by Terry Dean, mentored by Jeff Mulligan. And what happened is when this whole thing came together, it was with a software company, and it wasn't your typical joint venture. It was one where I was paid a piece rate,
Mhm.
and that's how that worked. But I did a second joint venture at the same time. Whoops. Um, did a second joint venture at the same time with another guy who was also involved with this company. And in that case, he was selling to his audience. We did a 50-50 split, and it worked out just great. But so that was my introduction to it. And it's like, this is really cool. But prior to that, I didn't know anything about joint ventures at all. I mean, I was working as a freelance writer, and it was just really annoyed with the cap that was on my income in terms of magazine writing. There's only so high you can go. And I got into joint ventures because I was just really, really sick of the limitations on my income. Joint ventures, there are no limits. Writing for magazines, huge limits. And
Mhm.
if you do it, you have to be aware of that. And I didn't know that when I got into it. But anyway, the joint ventures were much better. But I had quite a few failures after that. And it was mostly because I didn't have a system. And this time around, when I made the decision to get back into it, I did a search on the internet because one of the people I admire a great deal is a guy by the name of Jay Abraham,
Mhm.
and he wrote a book called Mediocrity to Millions, and I managed to find it and download it and started reading it. Shortly after that, I had an invitation to a joint venture challenge, a 5-day challenge with an outfit called JVology. I signed up with that. Then I found out there was a prize at the end of it, and I realized that if I could win it, it would help me. So I played the challenge very intentionally, and I made sure that I did everything right. I kept chatting with the organizers, and short stories, I won the prize at the end of it. So I wound up with access with all this joint venture information. A third piece of information I want to give your listeners, there's a guy out there by the name of Sohail Khan, and he wound up doing a very similar deal to me in terms of the software, but he was much smarter about it than I was. That's for sure. He had a lot more experience. And he wound up with zero to multi millions worth of customers and income within 30 days.
Mhm.
I actually plan to interview him in the near future about that. But he co authored a book with the late J. Conrad Levinson about joint ventures. And it's also a really good idea to read. So read that, read Mediocrity to Millions, join JVology. And between all three of them, you'll get a really good idea of what joint ventures are, how they work, and how to take care of yourself.
Well, thank you for sharing that. When I first got introduced to joint venture was in 2006.
Yeah.
Is when I got introduced to joint venture with Robin Elliott.
Oh, Robin Elliott. He's
Yeah,
a friend of mine, actually.
yes, Robin was with the boot camp, Dollar Makers, and that's how I got introduced.
Yeah, Dollar Makers. Sure. I
So
was a part of that too. I'd
I was,
forgotten about that.
I was,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was part of.
Robin's a
That's how
friend of
I got
mine.
introduced to joint ventureship.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
Robin was here. So definitely. So, but I want to thank you so much for Nathan. I know for those who are watching, please do connect with Nathan if you want to find out more. Remember, the sky is the limit. What you can do with this, truly, it is. The sky is the limit. You can do so much if you know what you want, what you're doing. I know you do have a group that on social media. You just want to, give us
Yeah.
the um the link for
Sure.
that to find it.
It's JV Brokers Secrets on Facebook. There's a group and a page by the same name.
Mhm.
So
And I
just
can
look me
tell
up.
you, yeah, I can tell you he's very active in it. He's very, very active in it. I can see it all the time.
Yeah.
But again, there's always something to learn, and we're always learning, and we're always sharing. And you have to know what your worth is. It comes down to the end of the day when you're talking about dollars and cents or commission. You need to know what your worth is and what you're holding in your hands. That's tangible, like your contact list, for example. People, when you meet people, build that relationship. Build that relationship with them. Just a few last words of anything you want to tell our viewers before we leave today.
Not really that much, except the joint ventures. I mean, in essence, it's actually very simple. And but the key is, like I said, my mistakes. You need to educate yourself. Take the time. Like I gave these three references: JVology, Mediocrity to Millions, and Sohail Khan's book. Study that stuff. It will tell you everything you need to know about contracts and relationships. I mean, a huge part of the joint venture thing is it's all about relationships. And in JVology, one of the things they say, I'll go first. In other words, when you connect with somebody, offer to do something for them right off the bat as a way of building the relationship.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and you might want to ask some targeted questions. Like a question I'd like to ask is, what is the number one thing you need or want for your business that you don't have now?
Mhm.
And that's a really good way of opening the door and getting conversation going.
Absolutely. And you know, as simple and just in my closing, and thank you so much for sharing and being with us.
You're welcome.
Even a simple event, that's a joint venture. A simple event, whether it be online or in person, those are joint ventures because you're working together with someone to do something, whether it be a product or service, or like in this case, an event. And that's what's considered. So we do joint ventureship every single day. We just don't realize we're doing it. We just don't get paid for it. But we want to make sure that you do it and you do it the right way. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us, contact Nathan, contact myself, and we can talk. And you and I can actually do a joint venture. You and Nathan could do a joint venture. And like I said, it's all about doing your homework. There's no question. Do your due diligence, build the trust, be your credibility means everything in a joint venture. So if you're looking for to start this as an income, I would suggest to you, you live it, you breathe it, you sleep it, you eat it, you know it inside out like the back of your hand, because that's going to make the difference in the world and have some ironclad contracts and agreements in place. Not to do it yourself, get some lawyers involved, get people, the experts, read the books that Nathan recommended or go research it. But I want to say to your success, we all do joint ventures. So if we can do it, you can do it. So until next time on the Deanne Show, this is Deanne and this is Nathan here today saying thank you and catch us on the replay. So we would love to say it was amazing talking to everyone, and thank you audience for dropping in. Some were there, we were in a conversation, we didn't get to you, but definitely thank you all for, and in the replay, just hashtag replay, put a comment what you liked about it, what you'd like to find out more about. So until next time on the DN Show, this is DN saying thank you so much and have an awesome day. Thank you so much, Nathan.
You're welcome.